All right, you guys got me okay? Very good, thank you. Good afternoon, my name is Matt Clark. I'm a lieutenant in the Denver Police Department's Major Crimes Division. Thank you for being here today and giving me an opportunity to provide an overview of the incident involving the police officer-involved shooting that occurred yesterday, Monday, December 28, 2020, at approximately 11:25 in the morning. This incident occurred in the area of 10th Avenue and Monaco Street. This is intended to be a preliminary briefing based upon the information that we've gathered to this point, including interviewing witnesses, speaking with the involved officers, and analyzing evidence from the scene. Please understand this investigation is in the early stages at this point, and there may be questions that I might not be able to answer as we go through. This was a rapidly evolving, very dangerous, violent situation yesterday involving multiple victims and multiple offenders. So I'm going to do my best to concisely go through this incident to provide an overview of what occurred, and then we can fill in any gaps with questions at the end. Monday, December 28, 2020, at about 11:23 in the morning, the Denver Combined Communications Center received a 911 call from an individual who advised that they were witnessing their neighbor being assaulted. The caller reported that there were 3 individuals involved in this incident and that one of them possibly had a handgun. The caller provided thorough descriptions of the 3 parties that were involved and also provided a description of a vehicle that was not known to that person that was parked near the residence where the victim was being assaulted. These descriptions were promptly relayed to the responding officers. Uniformed Denver police officers from District 2 arrived minutes later and observed the described vehicle parked on the north side of the residence. The residence was at 950 North Monaco Street. This vehicle was on the north side of it, parked on 10th Avenue. As the officers approached the residence, the officers observed 2 individuals exiting the residence from the north access door. There was a 3rd individual seated in the driver's seat of the previously described vehicle. These individuals all matched the descriptions that were provided by the initial complainant that the officers were given. As the officers approached, the vehicle quickly fled the area. It went eastbound on 10th Avenue and turned southbound on Magnolia Street. That vehicle is still at large, and I'll speak to that a little later. One of the subjects who came out of the house ran eastbound on 10th Avenue towards Magnolia, and a responding uniformed patrol officer was able to take that individual into custody without incident in that immediate area there. The other male who came out of the house was observed holding a handgun in his right hand as he exited the residence. He immediately ran westbound on 10th Avenue towards Monaco Street. Once the officers saw this, they immediately began issuing commands to that individual and pursuing him on foot as he ran westbound. The individual with the handgun went into the northbound lanes of Monaco Street in the 1000 block. He was in the number 1 lane, which is the left lane, where he stood in traffic, pointed his handgun at an approaching motorist, and demanded that the vehicle stop. When the driver stopped the vehicle, the male subject proceeded to the driver's side of the vehicle and began trying to open the door while still holding the handgun. The 2 uniformed officers who were pursuing the suspect on foot again issued multiple commands, which he failed to comply with. When the vehicle slowly rolled forward, the subject was exposed and still had the handgun in his hand. The officers were concerned for their safety and the safety of the motorist who was immediately next to the subject, and those officers discharged their weapons at the individual at that point. The subject turned and ran westbound through the large median. There's a very large median between north and southbound lanes of Monaco in that area there. He ran across the median, and while officers were pursuing him, one of the officers witnessed the individual throw the handgun that he previously used to attempt to carjack the vehicle. He threw it and it landed in the median. The subject continued running. He actually went up 10th Avenue and went into the Locust Monaco Alley, where he went northbound. He cut back through the yards and headed back towards Monaco Street. When he gets back to Monaco Street, he immediately approaches a vehicle that is now in the southbound lanes. So he's on the west side of Monaco. He approaches a vehicle that's in the southbound lanes and stops that vehicle in traffic and attempts to aggressively take that vehicle, forcefully take that vehicle as well. Around the same time, a uniformed patrol officer is responding to the area. He's traveling southbound and observes this, turns on his emergency lights, and approaches the scene there. The driver of that vehicle is able to speed off. He's able to get away safely, leaving the suspect running into the median now. He's wide open in the median. The officer continues following him. At that point, he's issuing verbal commands and is not getting a response from the suspect. The suspect goes across the large median into what are the northbound lanes of Monaco. The officer was fearful that the individual was going to attempt to steal another vehicle, so to help prevent this, the officer began walking in the roadway to slow traffic behind him. There were two vehicles that were parked ahead of that were stopped on the roadway in lane number 1. All right, Doug.
Just please, as a reminder, mute your microphones.
Thanks.
Just turn the speaker.
Okay,
I'll turn this-
sorry about that for the interruption, but we're back now. So he goes into the northbound lanes. Again, the officer is walking intentionally in the roadway to stop vehicles, slow vehicles, and not give him another target vehicle to potentially victimize and steal. There were, however, two vehicles that pulled off onto the left side of the roadway there. The subject rapidly, very quickly approached one of the two vehicles, the rear vehicle. He aggressively opened the passenger door and quickly jumped into that vehicle. The officer was immediately there and ready to engage and interact with the offender at that point. The officer was specifically concerned that the individual was going to assault or kidnap the victim as he was attempting to take her vehicle. It was clear to the officer that the female driver was very scared based on her face, and that this was not a known individual to her that got into her vehicle. As a result of his concerns and in an effort to stop the carjacking from occurring, the officer fired multiple rounds from his weapon into the passenger window directly at the subject there. From there, the officers were able to safely remove the female driver from the vehicle, and the male subject was also extracted from the vehicle. Officers took him into custody and began rendering aid. An ambulance arrived at the scene moments later and transported that individual to Denver Health Medical Center for treatment. The female driver was assessed by paramedics and was found to be unharmed. While the suspects were being pursued, additional responding officers went to the residence where they were initially called, where the subject had been assaulted. Upon making entry, the officers immediately found an adult male victim who had been shot multiple times. The victim was removed from the residence by officers so he could be attended to by paramedics while the officers continued searching the residence. In the kitchen, the officers located an adult female who had also been shot. She was removed from the residence, rushed to Denver Health Medical Center, and she remains at that location in critical condition. Unfortunately, despite the efforts of the officers and the paramedics, the male victim succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased at the scene. Through the investigation, we learned that two of the three offenders approached the residence wearing construction-style reflective vests. The two went to the front door of the victim's residence, posing as utility workers in an effort to gain access to his residence. We're still working to determine the sequence of events that occurred once inside the residence. In the end, we do know that both the male and female victims were shot in the residence before the suspects fled. The male victim was determined to be the homeowner of the residence, and his identity will be released by the medical examiner's office in the next couple days. The female was a visiting family member who does not reside at the residence. She remains hospitalized in critical condition. At the scene, investigators recovered 3 firearms that are preliminarily being associated with the offenders in this case. A rifle was located directly outside of the residence. A handgun was recovered in the median area of Monaco Street near the northbound lanes. This handgun is believed to be the weapon the offender used when he attempted to steal the first vehicle on Monaco. And a third firearm was recovered from the individual who was arrested on Magnolia Street. Investigators also recovered the female victim's wallet in the property that was associated with the deceased subject. During the investigation, it was determined that that one of the rounds fired by the officers struck a vehicle that was driving southbound on Monaco Street. That vehicle was previously not involved and was not a target of the officers. At the time, the vehicle was occupied by an adult male driver. the round that struck the vehicle did not enter the passenger compartment, and the driver was uninjured. 3 Denver police officers discharged their duty handguns in this incident. In total, 7 rounds were fired by the officers. The officers involved in this incident were equipped with body-worn cameras, and their cameras captured each officer's interaction with the individual. Through the investigation, we interviewed multiple civilian witnesses, including the original complainant, victims of the multiple attempted carjackings, and others who were in the area as part of this investigation. I can report that none of the officers in this incident were injured. At this point, investigators believe this group of offenders is likely associated with a series of burglaries, residential burglaries that have been occurring in the area. 2 of the firearms that were recovered as part of this investigation were taken in a recent nearby burglary. In terms of the officers that were involved, all officers were wearing standard Denver police uniforms and were driving marked Denver police vehicles. 1 officer is a corporal who has been with the department since 2000. 1 is a police officer who's been with the department since 2000. And the 3rd is a police officer who's been with the department since 2014. None of the officers have been involved in a prior police shooting incident, and the officers are currently working in a modified duty assignment. The identity of the deceased subject will be released by the medical examiner's office in the coming days. I can provide information about the individual that was taken into custody at 10th and Magnolia. That is 38-year-old Joshua Hamm, Hamm. His date of birth is April 19th of 1982. Mr. Hamm is currently being held for investigation of first-degree murder, aggravated robbery, first-degree burglary, and possession of a weapon by a previous offender. Investigators are still looking for a 3rd individual involved in this case. He was described as a 30-year-old black male who was bald with an average build, and he may present as a female as well. He was associated with a black 2009 Honda Fit. We released a Crime Stoppers bulletin today with that photo, and I will show that here as well. We'd ask that that be released so we can attempt to locate that vehicle and that individual. The investigation of this critical incident is being conducted by the Denver and Aurora Police Departments as well as the Denver District Attorney's Office. These investigations are actively monitored by the Office of the Independent Monitor, which is a civilian entity. Anyone with information regarding this incident is asked to call the Denver Police Department or Crime Stoppers, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have. I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Why they were trying to enter this home? Was it just a random home, or?
We're not certain of why this house or how this house was targeted.
In total, how many vehicles did that subject try to, get into?
We're aware of 3 at this point.
3. And any of the drivers injured?
No, none of them were injured. The 2, he couldn't get into the vehicle. The 1 he did get into the vehicle, there was no injury. And I do take that back. She had some minor glass injuries from the bullets impacting the window, but she was not struck by the rounds that were fired. I'll briefly put the gun on the screen that we recovered that was associated with the deceased individual as part of the carjacking. This is the condition we found that handgun in the field, and this handgun was stolen in a previous burglary.
Do we have any questions on the team's call?
Is the relative, the female relative, is that the man's daughter, the owner's daughter?
So, to protect her identity, recognizing she's a victim, I'm not going to confirm her relationship to that individual at this time.
Was she shot in the head?
Also, that's something, we have an outstanding offender, and I need to protect that information so we can interview him and see what he knows relative to her injuries.
Where was the owner shot?
I'm sorry, I missed your question again.
Where was the owner shot?
He was shot in the leg and in the head.
Did any of the suspects fire at officers?
We don't have any evidence at this point indicating that the individuals fired at the officers.
When the officer who shot the suspect at the final carjacking, did he fire through the front window of the car or the Which window did he fire through?
The front passenger door.
Okay.
Just to confirm, the person who was killed by the officer did not have a gun on them at the time. They threw the gun away before that, correct?
He had thrown that gun away, and we are still looking to search the vehicle, but at this point we have not recovered a second gun associated with that individual.
How common is it for burglaries to turn violent like this? It seems like it was broad daylight, and I know that burglaries commonly don't it's different than a robbery, right? Is this common in this neighborhood or anywhere else to have burglaries turn violent while people are home?
No, it's not. It's not my experience that they typically turn violent. Often, a homeowner being present will cause a burglar to move along or try a different target.
Is there any evidence that the homeowner or the woman inside tried to defend themselves with a weapon or otherwise?
We still need to work with the surviving victim to determine, again, the sequence of events that occurred inside the house.
Thank you.
Is this a gang-related incident, and did they come in from Aurora?
I don't have information on either of those, to answer either of those. There's nothing to indicate this was gang motivated.
Why police officers are part of the investigation?
I'm sorry, I missed your question.
Just wondering why Aurora police officers are part of the investigation, if I heard that correctly.
Sure.
Why that's the case.
Sure, thanks for the question. So, as part of the protocol related to the legislative change in 2015, the Denver Police Department works cooperatively with Aurora. That's statutorily mandated, and it provides additional transparency to our investigation. So they co-investigate, much as we co-investigate any incident that would occur in their city with their major crimes division.
Is that because it's an officer-involved shooting, or is that just because of the geographic location, or is that because that's just how the agreement is written?
It's because it's an intentional discharge of a weapon by an officer, and that's what the 2015 legislation mandated.
Any leads as to where the other suspect could be at right now?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Any leads as to where the suspect could be?
The outstanding suspect? We don't. That's why we need help. I'm going to put the picture of the vehicle that we're looking for. That'll be included in the Crime Stoppers bulletin as well. That is the actual vehicle with the offender inside. And so anybody that can help us track that vehicle down, identify the individual, that's the assistance we need at this point.
No further questions?
If there's no further questions, I've been asked to give a brief update on the double shooting investigation on South Federal. Is there anything before I move on to that? Okay. I've been asked to give an update on we have a double shooting investigation, the 2900 block of South Federal, unfortunately involving a small child in this case. I'll give you a brief update if we're ready for that. So this occurred yesterday, the 28th, about 4:30 in the afternoon. Again, it occurred in the parking lot in the 2900 block of South Federal Boulevard. At that location, officers got dispatched to the area on a report of a shooting. They responded and quickly determined that two individuals had been shot there. One was an adult male, and the other was a very young child who was in a vehicle. The adult male victim was previously in the parking lot. It appears that he may have been taking pictures of a vehicle that was parked in a handicapped spot with one of the tires up on a curb. At some point, an individual associated with that vehicle came out of a business and he began shooting at the male who was taking pictures of the vehicle. These rounds struck both the male that was taking pictures and the young child who was in the vehicle nearby. Both victims were transported to the hospital for treatment. The adult male was treated and released from the hospital last night. The child remains in the hospital in critical condition. At this point, investigators do not believe that the family associated with the child in the van had any interaction or involvement with either the other victim or the shooter in this case. This is a very sad and senseless case. Our investigators are working tirelessly to identify and apprehend the suspect in this incident and have been doing so since it occurred. Today, we're releasing a photograph of the vehicle that was involved in this incident that's associated with the offender. I would ask anybody who recognizes this car to please contact Crime Stoppers as soon as possible. That vehicle is described as a 2000 to 2004 red Subaru Outback. The subject involved has been described as a Hispanic male in his 20s. He was wearing red flannel pajamas and a black hoodie and was wearing glasses. We need assistance to get this individual identified and apprehended as soon as possible. I'll show you the picture of the vehicle that we're looking for. That's open case, obviously very fresh. Any brief questions I might be able to answer on that?
Did you guys get a license plate?
We don't have a license plate.
Young child, is she around, we've been told she's around the age of like 2 to 3, is that accurate?
It is a young child, yes.
Do you know any more information about the child's condition other than being critical? Do you know anything about the outlook of the child's condition?
I do at this point, in consideration of the family, I'm not going to release any additional information about her condition.
Do you know why the child and her family were in that parking lot? Were they picking up food?
We believe so.
And do you know if the suspected shooter and the guy who was taking pictures of the vehicle, did they know each other?
We have not established that yet.
Have you released the identities of the 2 shooting victims?
No. We don't typically identify shooting victims.
I don't know if you mentioned already, but is there any relation between the man who was shot, who was taking the picture with the people inside the vehicle, or with the minor?
So we have no connection. We have not established a connection between any of the involved parties at this point.
What business did the shooter come out of?
I'm actually not sure on that one.
Was there an altercation between the shooter and the guy taking the pictures, or any idea what prompted the guy to start firing?
It appears that he may have witnessed the individual taking pictures and he came out firing. There doesn't appear to be, from witness statements and the interviews we've conducted so far, does not appear to be a confrontation, verbal argument, anything like that.
Sorry, you said he came out firing. Did he come out of a business firing or come out of his car firing?
He came out of a business.
Any of the businesses said if they've seen this guy before?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Have any of the businesses in the area said that this guy has frequented the area before to shop there?
Not that I'm aware.
Can you give us the latest homicide stats for the city?
Yes, we have 94 criminal homicides year to date.
And how does that compare to previous years?
I'm not sure the year to date, but we're so close to the end of the year. I know we closed last year at 63 criminal homicides.